Hey, welcome to our podcast today. Champions are built. This is Coach EJ, the brand.
And this is Coach Aaron, the source. EJ, what's our topic for today? I know we've talked about a couple of things and we've picked one out, so let the listeners and viewers know.
Okay, Aaron, today what we're going to talk about is this subject. Why are kids going back to the transfer portal? Why are players going back and saying, I want to go into portal and transfer to another school? That's our subject today. And it's something that is pretty, relevant today. We see a lot of collegiate athletes um, change schools after a year or two. I mean, I'm seeing after a year a lot, Aaron, and that's affecting another subject we can talk about later. It's college recruiting. But our subject today, why are players really going back into the transfer portal?
It's a good subject. Nowadays, athletes are definitely a lot more transient. They're mobile, they're moving around school to school. And like you said, we're gonna have a companion podcast to this basically called the new collegiate free agency that will also address that. So guys, look for that podcast coming up as well. But let's just kind of talk about maybe some of those internal or personal reasons why athletes are kind of find themselves
Mhm.
moving from school to school. And obviously, probably the first one is playing time.
Right.
Um, there's a lot of kids who I don't think quite understand the collegiate process and what it takes to be a collegiate athlete. And so they have the impression or the assumptions that because a school is offering them a scholarship, that they're kind of, maybe guaranteed playing time. And
Right.
I always like to remind these athletes that a scholarship is an opportunity to compete for playing time,
Mm.
not a guarantee for playing time. So you still have to earn that playing time once you get on campus.
Well said right there. It's funny because we just had back on November 12th, Aaron, National Letter of Intent signings, right? And
Mhm.
everybody's excited, pumped up. Oh man, and they're taking their pictures with the 7 to 10 guys who are coming in the recruiting class. They're on campus, get their picture, it's on Instagram, Twitter, all the
Yeah.
social media outlets, and that's great, but it sure is a different reality when it's all smiles during these days. But the dog days of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go do weights, eating breakfast, studying, going to practice, post game workouts after practice, that's the real reality. And I think a lot of athletes go into the transfer portal because they don't understand that. And when they get on campus, they see that and say, this is not what I thought it was going to be. So let me transfer somewhere else where it's more to my liking,
Yeah.
or maybe it's the grass is greener over
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
theory to that. And in all reality, all the programs are doing the same thing. I'm talking about collegiate programs.
Yeah.
It's a way of a lifestyle for these student athletes that I think, they're not accustomed to. I would love to have this happen. I do this. I've been doing this for about 10 to 15, 20 years, Aaron, is having athletes that go to college that first year and then come back and talk to our club
Yeah.
ball members, our juniors and seniors that want to aspire to play collegiate athletics. And I feel when they hear it from them, maybe it's different from the coaches or the staff that we
Yeah.
have, and that this is reality. Or I love it when they just come out there and work out with us, Aaron. These
Yeah.
collegiate guys come back a year and they just go, dude, that's not gonna play at that next level. You can't do that. The coach is not gonna let you do that. So I don't know why you're doing it now. You might as well get used to doing it this way or acting this way or
Right.
understanding culture. And so I think that's why kids, one of the reasons why kids go back into the transfer portal. That's one reason. I think the other reason is money.
Mhm.
And that's the free agency that is another subject. But I think, players, you know, like compete 3 or 4 years and they have really good seasons and they go, maybe I can ante up into the big Power Four
Right.
conference. They go do that and they get some money and God, I got $180,000 in NIL money.
Mhm.
And we see that happening quite often now, and especially with the older guys who've been to places for 3 years, and all of a sudden now, that coach from that prospective school sees him out in the summer ball, playing summer ball, and goes, "Hey, you look pretty good out there." And then the player goes, "Hey, you got a spot?" And next thing you know, that player's transferring.
Right.
It's crazy. And I think that's another reason why we see that. I think it's very interesting time for these athletes. But I think the main thing, Aaron, is that these guys are surprised how the college atmosphere is so much different than what they're used to.
Well, I mean, you said the word quite a few times, and the key word is reality. And I think that the perceptions or the expectations of these athletes and even the parents aren't always based in reality because everything kind of sells them on the front end.
Right.
You're having great conversations with the coaches, and you're still kind of in that initial dating period. Even though they've scouted you, they still
Mhm.
don't completely know you. And
Right.
you definitely don't know the program. So they've probably got more information on you than you do on them. And so it's a reality check when they get on campus. And I just think it's nice and it's fun with social media. The kid shows up in his school to be uniform and all that stuff, and that's all cute
Right.
and fine. But I think that fuels that, because now you're putting the kid in the uniform. Now you're doing all these things.
Right.
And I think in the kids' minds, thinking, hey, I've made it, I'm accepted, they want me, da 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 da. And they extrapolate that into, okay, I'm going to be playing and all that. And
Mhm.
when they get there, and the coach is like, okay, compete. And you're like, what? Compete for what? And
Mhm.
I think some kids have a hard time with that. And sometimes it's just as simple as some kids don't have the patience to wait in line,
Right.
you
I
know?
see
And
that.
and a high school kid, I really think unless you're very, very, very exceptional, and we had that talk with the Cal coaches, but Bodislaw and Wallace,
Right.
you're probably gonna be standing in that queue for at least a year, that first year. And I
Right.
think when kids get to campus and they're not playing that first year, they get a minimal level of at bats or get to go to a few races or a few minutes in a game. They're
Right.
thinking, well, what's wrong with me? You guys recruited me. Why aren't you playing me?
Mhm.
And sometimes it's hard to look outside yourself and say that, hey, there's two or three guys that are better than you
Right. Right.
and more experienced and know the game. And you got to remember, these teams need to win now.
Mhm.
So you've
Mhm.
got to get yourself up to speed and you've got to earn and you've got to take that spot. You've got to take those minutes
Mhm.
and take those opportunities versus just thinking, okay, well, now that I'm here, they're going to lay it out for me.
Mhm.
Um,
Where what where do you think the fault lies? Is that something with in recruiting? And this could be off subject. I don't know, Aaron, but
No, I don't really think there's any fault. I do think there's an environment that's fostered, that's set up to get the kids really rah about the school. Like I said, putting a uniform on them and saying, "Hey, I've signed," and
right.
other sorts of announcement sorts of things that I think feed into the ego and feed into the dream. Hey, now I'm a collegiate athlete. I'm going to play at the next level when that's not quite the reality. So I don't know if it's a fault thing, but I
Mhm.
think some of those sorts of, you know, mechanics don't
Right.
help the situation.
Mhm.
And I don't know if how it can be done, but I think kids need to maybe, and again, I don't know if this can be done, but kids need to maybe go spend some time with that team somehow, or watch their practices
Mm-hmm.
and kind of get a better feel for the inner workings of what they're going to have to do. Maybe maybe again, I don't know if colleges can do this or not, but maybe they can have the day in the life of a USC athlete, and they get all their potential recruits to come in, and they take them through a day
Mm-hmm.
so that they understand what that might give them a little bit of a glimpse of what it might look like and what's
Right.
expected of them, and what they're going to be facing. I don't know, but
Well, yeah,
that curtain needs to be pulled back
right,
so
right.
that these athletes can prepare themselves better to make that transition, because it only gets harder for a high school athlete now. I mean, it's very hard for a high school athlete.
Yeah.
And so you've got to have determination, perseverance. You've also got to be able to read the room and know where your seat is in that room
Right.
to navigate it. Most people say, hey, you know what? Oh, I don't have a chair. I'm leaving, you know, and
Right.
they don't stick it out. And
Right.
everything, sports is ups and downs. There's lows and there's highs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you bail every time there's a low, well, you know,
Yeah, man, you made some great points. When I'm in my recruiting class and working with athletes and EJ Sports, and I think about what do I tell them? And man, you hit every point that I talk to them on the with the hammer right on top of that nail. And I think there's an education factor here. People out there that you need to understand if you have athletes that are trying to aspire to be a collegiate athlete is that do your homework like Aaron says. Do your homework. The day of a life of an athlete. I mean, if you go and visit a campus, man, wow, what a good way to understand what really goes on if you can do that. There's a lot of rules now that allow certain things and don't allow certain things,
yeah.
Aaron. So it just depends. But I would do my homework, like you said, and that would alleviate why guys transfer so much and why
Mm,
guys are in the portal if you do your homework. And I think one of the reasons is the glorification of signing day. It's been
mhm.
so crazy that everybody thinks it's, man, great time. It's going to be like this all the time. And it's not. I said this earlier and you mentioned it, reality. It's so unrealistic that that's how it is every day. I always tell people this, Aaron, you work in the dark because in the dark is really what happens to greatness. Is that's when greatness is found, in the dark, when no one's around, when no one's got the camera on you and you're just out there. And I think that gets lost in translation with this subject of the transfer portal, is that it's a lot of working in the dark. And if you're not used to working in the dark, it's going to be difficult for you to stay at that institution and do that. So I think that's a reason why I think people are just uneducated about what it really means to be a collegiate athlete, and that's why so many players are into this transfer portal these days. And I see it all the time. And it's kind of crazy. I mean, I have so many players that call me back, and say, think about transferring. And I go, why? What happened? I'm not playing. And it goes back to a freshman athlete. When we were playing athletics, Aaron, track and field and baseball on my part, you're a freshman. The expectation when I went on campus at UCSB, we had about 6 freshmen in our class. And one of us played, and that was me. And the other guys got 20, 30, 40 bats, but they didn't transfer. They said, I'm sticking this thing out.
Yeah.
I'm going to play one day. And
Yeah.
these other guys are better than me right now. I just have to get, and for all of us is to get more physical and stronger and faster and understand the caliber of play. It was so different, going to a D1 school and all of
Yeah.
a sudden it's faster game. It's a
Yeah.
faster game. And I saw the game being faster and more skilled athletes. And I think today athletes don't understand that. As a freshman, it's a privilege to play,
Hmm.
not a guarantee to play.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my own personal experience, I mean, believe it or not, but at San Diego State, when I was running there, we actually had a depth chart, a
Right.
sprinter's depth chart. And so to get an opportunity to travel each week, you had to prove yourself. And the only way you can do that is through performance. And so so each week, if you didn't perform, you may not be on that travel squad the next week. And so
Right.
you had your home meets, which we were able to compete in, but not everyone traveled. And
Hmm.
so that was something that you had to earn week to week, especially if you're number 4 or number 5 on that depth chart and you've got 8 sprinters. They're not going to take 8 sprinters across the country. So for me, just from day one, that's what I faced, and that's what I had to do. Um, and I don't know if athletes are kind of used to that, where you gotta kind of work your way through. You got to beat some people out, and you got to do it week in and week out. And it's
Right.
by your performance. It's not just because you signed a piece of paper with them.
Right. I have a question. Do you think, because of the era that we're in right now, that we can jump from team to team or jump from this club to that club, that plays into athletes
Oh
using
yeah,
the transfer portal
yeah.
today? Is that because, and
Everyone's
yeah, everybody wants to just leave their travel
well,
team or leave whatever and go to the next one, and
right,
there's no ramification behind it.
right.
It's like, oh yeah, you go do it, no problem.
Sports are so transient now. I mean, from an early age, kids are used to, oh, you know what? I don't like this coach, or I don't like their schedule, or I don't like, these
Right.
teammates, or whatever the I don't like dot 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 is, everyone's everyone's able to pick up their bag and leave. From kids who are playing clubs to high schools, people
Right.
transfer high school. When I was in high school, what are you talking about? You didn't transfer high schools unless you moved. So it's, from the onset now, athletes can have one foot out the door all the time. And when you know you've got one foot out the door, you're never really settled in the spot that you're in to dig in and commit to where you're at and work through that environment.
Right.
Because you've got one hand on the ripcord all the time. And these kids go through life, their sports life, like that, feeling like, okay, well, this isn't going to work, pull the ripcord. Oh, this club isn't going to work, pull the ripcord. Oh, this school isn't going to work, pull the ripcord.
Right.
So I think that's a mentality versus, and the parents have that mentality. Oh, my kid's not happy, or it's too tough. We're just going to find another school. It's like, well,
Right.
what in my day, my father would say, no, you're gonna stick, you're gonna stay there, and you're gonna figure it out, and you're gonna
Right.
work through it. And when you have no other choice but to work through it, you figure it out. So yeah, I think it's a mindset that has been fostered, early on now.
Right.
And so, yeah, you get into college. I only got 32 at bats. I'm out of here. It's like,
Right.
well, what were your 32 at bats? What did they look like? Well, they may be justified in only giving you 32 at bats.
You know,
Or you're only traveling to 2 track meets.
right. Right.
But people don't see that. And to me, I've always felt that you create opportunity. You
Right.
create opportunity. And luck is taking advantage of that opportunity when it arrives, being ready to do that. But
Right.
other people think, hey, opportunity is just your name on a roster, and you're going to get X amount at bats without having really proved yourself.
Right. Yeah, it's
So
so true. I mean, man, it's just, man, I hit home when you said that. I was like going, you know, people talk about the game at bats, but they don't talk about practices and how you
yeah.
show up, work out, and how hard you work. You know, th those opportunities create, like you said, playing time or the ability to run at the next meet or what the opportunities. And I think athletes today think that an opportunity is a guarantee for them because they have
Yeah.
some money or they have somebody promise them something. Nothing's promised. And
Yeah.
I think that's, a big ticket in why so many guys are in the transfer portal is that promises, promises, promises. They think that, hey, listen, I did this. Someone owes me this,
Yeah.
you know. And I think the ability to earn something is lost in translation here. And I think that's one reason why kids are so much in the portal. So,
Yeah, when you sign that scholarship or whatever that is, that contract is, you should be thinking, this is a contract for me to have the opportunity to compete for a spot on this team that
right.
has to be earned. This is not a contract that says you have a spot on this team. If you think in those terms, I think you're gonna put yourself in good stead, whatever program you go to.
Right.
I mean, every program wants to win. And if you're showing yourself as an asset and a value, you're going to find your way. Even if the coach doesn't like you, even if all these other things that people
Right.
come up with. Collegiate sports, it comes down to winning. They want to win. And if you can hit 400, even if the coach doesn't like you, you're still going to be in that lineup.
No point. Coach got to
You
win.
know, if you
Exactly.
can run 10 1 seconds and, not be too disruptive to the team and you can score those points in those dual meets, guess who's getting on the bus?
Got your ticket.
Yep.
Well,
So anyway,
hey,
that's about all I have to say on it. I know we kind
right.
of went a little left a little bit on it, but I would sum it up in one word, like you said, reality. You
Yeah,
gotta live in reality, guys. And I think that's one reason why, people do leave transfer. They get in the
right.
portal so much. And it's easy for them now. Easy out. So take your hand off the ripcord and plant your feet firmly and do the work.
Yes. Well said, Aaron. And that concludes our podcast today. Champions are built. This is Coach EJ, the brand.
It's Coach Aaron, the source. We'll see you.